Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the economic situation of the country with, of course, what is going on, especially in terms of the kind of economic issues that the country has been facing for quite some time now. And, of course, as the days move closer to the deadline of the bailout program expiring with the IMF, it seems that Pakistan's hopes of even securing the 9th review seems to be diminishing, with Moody's also talking about how this is something that is going to bring Pakistan closer to the chances of default, especially if we don't see an IMF bailout program, which of course seems to be something that is a rare chance. There is also, of course, a lot of concern with regards to the budget, and of course the IMF also talking about how Pakistan needs to move forward with increasing tax and non-tax revenue as well, among other obligations from the budget. At the same time, we know that the government has pushed for the IMF to go ahead with the bailout program, talking about how Pakistan has had to present a budget that was responsible in these tough times, making a balancing act of the kind of obligations it faces, and then of course to provide relief to the masses. We also know that there is a lot of difficulty that the country is facing with regards to the economic situation, especially in terms of the high inflation rate and the fact that this also has a political impact with regards to elections later this year. We also know, of course, that the Prime Minister is on a two-day official visit to Azerbaijan, where he hopes to secure LNG and a contract that had earlier been shared by Azerbaijan as well, which is currently under cabinet review as to whether or not this is something that Pakistan can explore further in a long-term sense and on a monthly basis. This will be important in terms of Pakistan's energy needs, but exactly what nuances may be part of this and what sort of challenges exist is also important. We also know that the Minister for Petroleum has spoken about the triumph with regards to bringing in Russian crude oil, and has talked about how it has been tested already with refineries in Pakistan, bringing to light the kind of concerns that were earlier being raised with regards to whether or not this is going to be even possible within the country. He also talked about how a GCC country, there are talks underway with the country in terms of establishing a new oil refinery, but of course much of that remains to be seen, and the kind of impact that is going to have, with the minister also shying away from talking about any particular details with regards to the contract with Russia, saying that that is not something that he can share and is under no obligation to do so. We also know that when we take a look at this particular situation, there is also the way that the country would like to move forward to with reference to the U.S. support with regards to the IMF, in which we know that a U.S. congressman has urged the Biden administration to help, particularly with reference to climate change impact, which unfortunately seems to be something that Pakistan will likely face even in this year. But we know that the U.S. Secretary of State has also responded with reference to the IMF program, saying that it supports the kind of work that is happening and that the IMF institution is working for the benefit of the program. So all of this is going to be our focus in the first segment, highlighting the challenges that the country currently faces and what lies ahead in terms of the alternative. And when we talk about a year ahead with no IMF, what sort of alternatives is Pakistan willing or planning to explore? Our next segment is also going to be taking a little look at the political situation of the country, especially in light of the kind of rhetoric and narrative that has been going on for quite some time now, especially since the incident of May 9th. And we know that a lot of evidence seems to be pointing towards the involvement of political leaders from Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf within this planning. And we also know that a lot of other individuals and influencers have been part of also making sure that this is something that the people believe and that they act on it. In a recent incident, we also know that a YouTube video has surfaced coming in from Mr. Adnan Raja and others, in which he has spoken about the incidents of May 9th and have urged people to go ahead and harm military installations, as was done so on the day, including others as well. And when we take a look at this, of course, we know that the consequences have been reiterated both by the military leadership and the civil leadership as to be something that is not to be taken lightly. But again, whether or not we're going to be seeing that actually happen and what sort of responsibility can even be put with regards to the way that this evidence is going to show up in court and the kind of legal value it's going to hold. So that is going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, we've been joined by our senior analyst, Farrukh Pitafi, all the way from Quetta. Thank you, Farrukh, for being part of the debate, as always. We've also been joined in the studios by Mr. Amer Zafar Durrani, President, Reenergia. Thank you, Mr. Amer, for being with us. And we've also been joined by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, a senior economist online. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan, for being a part of the discussion. And let me start with you, Dr. Khaqan. The situation that we have seen, and we've talked about it often in our shows as to where we stand today, but it seemed that the government wasn't ready to talk about how the situation perhaps is weakening in terms of any hope with regards to the IMF bailout program. But now that we're almost in the middle of June, and there are serious concerns being raised, and it seems that this is not going to happen, do you think that this is something that the government has prepared for? And if yes, and we are going to go ahead in the next fiscal year without IMF, what options are there for the country?
Sana, always good to be. I think government has realized, albeit a little late, that there is no real alternative to the IMF program when a country is in a balance of payments challenge. This finance minister, I think, knows more than anyone else how important that is. As I've always repeated, that the misnomer in Pakistan has always been as if Pakistan has done some 22 odd programs. Pakistan has never completed an IMF program, and that's for you to see the difficulty Pakistan faces to complete a program. 1316 was the only program Pakistan ever completed, and because I was assisting the team at that time, so I know that for a fact. In the current program also, we had several times in and out, even during the past government's time. And then when this government came in, we were able to go back to the program in August, where we completed the 7th and the 8th review together. I think we should have just stuck to the fund. I would have hoped that in November we would have completed that. I think Pakistan would have been in a more comfortable position and would have gotten the breather that we were looking for. Pakistan's State Bank's reserves, and I'll let the State Bank come up with the report tomorrow, though I know they have fallen much below the $4 billion level, as we've had to make a payment to China, which hopefully will be refinanced. The reason I say that is to realize the intensity of the issue, and the issue very simply is that without an IMF program, and we still have a bit of a hope that the 9th review may get completed. But for that, the country would have to make some changes in the budget. I know that we are engaged with the fund. I know this from both sides, in fact. I know the government is still trying that they can do the changes in the budget. They can somehow make the $6 billion financing arrangement, if not six, maybe a little bit more than the $4 billion. And they have done one thing though. Today, I last checked, the rupee difference in the interbank market and the open market, I think we have agreed with the fund should be about 5%, had come close to that level. So I think one of the conditionalities that the fund is looking for currently has been fulfilled. I still hope that we can do the 9th review. If not, plan B, and people are looking for a plan B. The plan B is what the government has invoked today, which means curtail the imports, not good for the economy. At the same time, try for the multilateral project monies to flow in. And lastly, go to the friends. And China has been that friend who did refinance a loan earlier. And I think I have it on good knowledge that $2.3 billion of Chinese money that is due to them this month will either be reprofiled and refinanced within this month, or I think hopefully early July. But without the fund, what I'm more uncomfortable with is July, August, September, October, and then November, because till November, I think we will not be able to have a new program, because this government has kind of decided that they will not initiate the IMF discussions. My view to the government has been that no, you would have to initiate the discussions in July. That's my very well thought out view, having seen the programs. And the contours can be discussed. Let's say this government was to come back, it will be easier to get into a program. Let's say PTI or PPP or whoever the other parties are, Maulana Fazlur Rahman or whoever comes in would have at least the contours discussed as they come in. And even the caretaker setup this
Khaqan,
time
what,
should
what
not be.
I'm hearing is, I just want a clarification. What I'm hearing is that there are going to be serious economic challenges, but that the country will not default, because this is something that, of course, the people are concerned about. We've been hearing this from Moody's or other agencies as well, and we know that the finance minister has reiterated that the country will not default, but in a recent interview, he also mentioned that at least till December it will not default. So exactly what sort of concern should there be in terms of Pakistan defaulting?
So till December, I will just add up the numbers as I talk to you, and we can give the numbers to the people. What is due? About $4 billion of payments on the debt are due till December. When you start July, you'll be still under $4 billion, and I don't want to quote the number. I'll let the State Bank do this. So you would have to go to some rollovers with China. You would have to go to some friendly countries, and you can go. That's the good part. I mean, I've myself done it a number of times, so you can do that. So some monies would have to flow in, and then maybe you will be in a comfortable position, and the default could be avoided. But that's still not the comfortable path to do. It's a precarious path, it's a difficult path, and it will continue to have repercussions on the rupee and on the way we handle our imports. So I think the earlier we get into a new fund program, or maybe a bridging facility with the fund, if that could be arranged, or maybe some comfort could be given to the multilaterals, so that their project and program financing could throw in a couple of $1 billion, it would be an easier sail through. So we have to make sure that we manage the inflows in a way that the incoming government can then take it up with the fund, and it should be a bigger and a more structural program, and then we move forward. That would be my view.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for that, Dr. Khaqan. We'll take a short break here and we'll be back with more discussion. Welcome back to the debate. We're talking about the economic challenges that Pakistan faces, and earlier we were talking about whether or not Pakistan will see through the IMF bailout package, which seems to be something that is difficult at the moment. But when we talk about the political leadership and what Dr. Khaqan Ali was saying also, there may seem to be some hope of achieving that. Mr. Amer, when we take a look at this particular situation, it seems that for now, especially after the budget, there are certain obligations that the country faces, or that the political leadership wants to balance. And there may be certain changes till the 30th of June, when we'll actually see what is going to come in the next fiscal year. Do you think that when we take a look at the kind of incentives so far that have been offered within the budget, and the kind of emphasis the government is laying on different sectors, that this will be something that the government will be able to pull through the next fiscal year and will be the right way forward, especially when we talk about the obligations that the IMF wants to put forward in terms of increasing revenue, that the situation will be a progressive direction for the country, both in terms of the masses and the industry?
Thank you very much, Sana. So I think that first and foremost, I am always amazed at Khaqan's optimism. So let me be very frank that I am optimistic that Pakistan is going to pull through, but I'm not quite optimistic that what the government's doing is going to help that. To be very honest, there are three things that kind of make me wonder. First and foremost, let's look at the geopolitical situation globally right now. I think that whether the fund comes in or not, the fact that they're dragging what are we on the 14th of June, and the last week is the last meeting of the fund for this fiscal year. At the end of the day, I think it's the geopolitics and what people around the world, and I will be very generic about it instead of labeling countries, think they want to do to Pakistan. I mean, that's very, very frank, and we should talk about that. Secondly, I think on the budget side, the thing that a fund is looking for is, I think, less numbers and more people. And I think that has become quite apparent in the last communique that was issued, where they really talk about stabilization, and they talk about the government, i.e. the PDM, actually stabilizing itself at the helm, giving positive signals. Now, I'm not really promoting delaying elections, if that's what people may think. Let me be very clear, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
But the whole idea that the whole House is actually speaking with unison, I think that's what they're looking for. I think in terms of revenue generation, I think the problem that we have here is that, again, I'm going to talk, I mean, from the fund's perspective and also from the perspective of an analyst, that it's not just what they don't look for revenue generation alone, they also are looking for what sort of cuts is the government willing to take. So you see, it's easy to cut imports, and I think Khaqan was very clear on that, that imports just hurts our exports because of the global value chains and how they work. And also a lot of products in Pakistan get hurt because of that for the average consumer. I think where we need to be focused on the revenue part is to show what part of the government is taking the cuts. I mean, are we really cutting down some of our own budget expenditure? But as you saw, there was a glaring rise in pensions and in salaries, which, as you know, I said this on another show, this will have a roll-on impact. For example, all the SOEs will ask for raises, etc. So I think coming from that perspective, the way I can sum it up is Pakistan will pull through. I mean, maybe I hope I don't live to eat my words, but I think that at the end of the day, Pakistan is going to pull through. But are we doing the right things to let it pull through with less difficulty? I'm not so sure.
All right. Mr. Farrukh, when we take a look at the situation, especially when we talk about the challenges that the country faces, there seems to be some sort of expectation or hope coming in from the US as well, and its help with regards to the IMF bailout package. We've seen that US Congressman has pushed the Biden administration towards it, and he has talked about the climate change challenges that Pakistan faces as well. But the kind of response that we heard from the Secretary seems that perhaps that the US is not going to involve itself within this dynamic, and I want to understand what your take is on that, whether or not we can expect that to sort of push the program forward. And also add to that the factors of the political situation both within the country. We know that the statement earlier had come from the IMF, but I remember you also talking about how there were various other countries that the IMF, in which the IMF had overlooked the kind of political problems that existed. Is that something that, despite whatever the budget issues have been raised, is still a consideration or factor in terms of how the IMF is approaching Pakistan?
Happened so far, we know in the past, when Pakistan was in a similar kind of situation. At that time, former army chief actually made a call. I'm talking about General Bajwa, and after that, and that call was made to Washington, D.C. After that, we heard that there's going to be some concession, and eventually, as a result, we saw that Pakistan finally got that tranche. What I actually surmise from that is that these things can happen, but that is clearly a choice. While you have heard a lawmaker, at this moment it is clear that a lot of lobbying is going on against Pakistan. So I wouldn't actually hold my breath right now. Regarding the domestic politics, of course, as Durrani sir was saying, the fund has clearly, in one of the press statements, actually had referred to the Constitution and the need to wait and see what happens next. So that is something that also actually is going to have a bearing on the circumstances. Of course, what we do with the domestic politics is up to us. But regarding this approach of not going to IMF for another program, it is quite intriguing, because in the past we have seen that we wanted to complete this program, and then we would have decided that we are not going to go for the next one. But when you have not actually managed to complete this one, it creates so much trouble, complications for the economy, that it becomes difficult if you are not going to once again approach the IMF for the next program. So the government keeps on talking about not defaulting, and I don't have any doubt that they have some plan B, My concern is right now not plan B. If you have seen any movies about apocalypse, usually they end with alphabet Z. So that refers to zombie. My concern is that we may not end up with an economy that keeps on running on fumes and behaves in a zombie fashion. So on one side, the government has actually floated many ideas, and we have seen some very constructive developments. I mean, we got LNG and also crude oil from Russia. Similarly, we are warming up to Iran as well. There is a possibility that we might be able to get some kind of restructure of the bilateral debts as well. But the problem is that on one side we hear the government actually talk about this restructuring or reprofiling for that matter, and then we see a statement coming from the State Bank of Pakistan that they haven't seen any program to that effect. So right now everything is concerned that things can improve, of course, but we seem to be in a situation where we haven't actually finished this program or don't seem likely to do, and then we haven't gone, we don't want to go for a next program either. So what exactly happens at this moment? I'm sure that this quarter will pass without any hiccup, but the last quarter of year 2023, that might actually create some problems for us. Yes, Sarah.
All right. Dr. Khaqan, there is also, of course, the very important external debt obligations, and we know that they're about 5 times the current reserves. We also know that there was earlier talk about debt restructuring, which was then denied by the State Bank Governor as well. But in terms of what Pakistan plans to do ahead, do you think that this can be something that possibly is on the table and that Pakistan will move for bilateral debt restructuring?
So for the 15 months, yesterday I was in Islamabad and I was giving a keynote address on a conference. The finance minister was the last speaker, and there I said that I've been using this presentation, of course, with upgraded numbers for 14 to 18 months, and I've been saying Pakistan is a case ripe for debt reprofiling. I even today maintain that position. And it is not something new that we are going to do. We reprofile our debt quite often, actually. But this time we need to be more aggressive about it, and we need to do it under the umbrella of the IMF. But of course, do it very carefully. And it's not a, I mean, next year, I know people say it's looking very, very difficult. Actually, if we had the umbrella of the IMF, it is not very difficult. Our debt that is repayable next year is $23 billion. That's the exact figure. Out of that, $10 billion are easily reprofilable. And I keep saying that, and the government, any government in power would be able to do that. The rest of the 13 are the ones we really need to handle, how we pick up the new debt, what we do with the multilaterals. And, you should hire a very smart group of men and women who can do that for us. So yes, I think that is something doable, but at the same time, something would have to be done on the domestic debt. Sana, let me give you a reason why I say that. This budget that we presented, and I mean, the IMF, I know, has many considerations to make on the budget, and they are talking to the government. But my simple consideration is that if I have to pay 7,300 billion in the markup payments, and Pitafi Saab, you must remember these 3 figures, and my total federal net position is 6,887. So I will borrow 416 billion rupees just to pay the markup that is owed by the federal government, mostly domestic and some international. So I start with a deficit of 416 billion, and all the other things are on borrowed money. So that's the severity of the challenge. So that challenge has to be met by some kind of debt reprofiling that the country needs to do. And it's not a bad thing. Sri Lanka is going through it, and I know exactly what they're doing because my wife is right now in Sri Lanka. She's kind of similar profession that I am, and seeing and helping on a number of issues with them. Pakistan would have to go through the similar thing. My hope is that do it before you get into a difficult position or a more difficult position. In Sri Lanka, they have actually rationed many things, and I don't want that to happen in Pakistan. So some kind of debt. And Pitafi Saab is generally right. The second quarter is looking tougher. That's why I'm worried about the electoral cycle. So somehow all these things have to come together. The present government has to put its share, then the caretakers would have to, and then we would have to really start the repair on the expenditure side of the budget. And taxation is an ongoing thing, and we keep doing it. That would the expenditure side would create some efficiencies of the government. Going of the subjects to the for example, the exact number. I was reconciling. There are 17 departments and divisions that need to be devolved to the provinces because the 18th Amendment has already devolved them. But we are paying 463 billion rupees a year by the federal government on current and development expenditure. These are not tenable positions. And it's not the doing of this government or the last government. We've, carried this through for a very long time. So serious repair would start somewhere. That would be my suggestion.
Amer, I'm assuming that you're in disagreement with Dr. Khaqan and you'd like to respond on that, but also add to that what, of course, the country is sort of celebrating in terms of the import of crude oil from Russia, and also the Prime Minister is currently on a 2-day official visit to Azerbaijan, the contract of getting LNG on a monthly basis from Azerbaijan. How will these two be able to contribute to the energy needs of the country, especially given the kind of difficulties that exist within the budget and the kind of situation that we're in?
Thank you very much. So no, I don't disagree with Khaqan.
Okay.
I mean, I may have a differing opinion. The disagreement is a very harsh word.
Okay.
The first thing is, I'll take Khaqan back to 1991. India is left with less than $1.3 billion of reserves. It's unable to meet its debt obligation. Manmohan Singh makes a fundamental speech, and that is the speech which I think the fund is looking for. I mean, I can tell you that from all sources. I mean, this glib meetings, whether they be on video conferences or jet-setting meetings in Dubai, they are not going to get anywhere until that speech is made. What is that speech? That speech fundamentally did the recognition, which is now why India is on a reform path. Monte Carlo Ahluwalia was brought in. I think that Manmohan basically said, we're going to pull our pants up, we're going to pull our socks up, and we are going to tough it out through this rough time. That message has not gone out to the Pakistani government, and I'd really appeal to the government of Pakistan. This, I think, Farrukh Pitafi alluded to, that it's not so much that we are not going to pull out. It's not that maybe the default is not going to be averted. It's that the economy needs to know what they have to do. If they have to pull up their socks, tighten their belts, let's tell them that. And I think that's where the government has to do that. Number two, I think Khaqan again made a very interesting point, but in the difference between the domestic and the international debt, the ratio is 67-33, 70-30, whatever but the lower number, and I think the audience should understand that, is our international obligation, which is required to be paid in foreign exchange. So I think that is very important to keep in our viewers' mind, that quoting these numbers in dollars or in exaggerated rupees, depending on the exchange rate, is not going to get us anywhere in terms of the narrative we want to build. So the second part of it is, we are not Sri Lanka, Khaqan. I mean, let's be very clear on this. Sri Lanka has two major sources of income, which gives them cash dollars. The first is tourism. The moment there is peace, tourists come back to Sri Lanka. Because they didn't have money to buy petroleum oil and lubricants, which they are now buying. As you can see, they just put 450 items of the HS code off their banned import list. So Sri Lanka is recovering because second part, it's on the main shipping highway, port of call. As you know, all port charges are paid in dollars. So I think that Sri Lanka, small little tiny island, remember it used to be called Ceylon, hasn't grown any bigger. So essentially that's where it stands. Last thing I think we need to really understand on this issue about, you said Azerbaijan and Russia.
Yeah.
I think that these are two very good things. I think that, let me also add another thing, that last week a Russian ship made a call simply to Pakistan, dumped some stuff, you can find out what it was, carried back a few containers, but Russia is actually making overtures. It's actually wooing Pakistan. And I think that we need to use that beyond just thinking about it as a source of energy, which I think is not as much of an immediate benefit as we may be gloating about. So I think that that's got, but what we do need to recognize is that right now Russia is actually taking positive steps, having a direct ship call service with no stops to Pakistan is really amazing. It just makes no economic sense for them, but they're doing it. So I think that's a very positive step. Secondly, let's go to Azerbaijan. So Azeris, they call Pakistanis, every man, every woman is Kardashian. They are age-old friends. But remember that Azeris are also as better businessmen, or if not better than the Saudis. And also, let's recall that Baku is where the first oil well was discovered, the commercial oil well as we know it. So I really doubt that we're going to get any good rates on the LNG, because LNG spot rates or long-term rates, they are as hazardous to bet as anything else in this world. So I think that what the Prime Minister will be getting, which I think again is positive, is maybe some sort of a deal where payments can be taken forward. Again, positive for us. But again, my closing statement would be, let's tell the people of Pakistan what the economy really looks like, what needs to be done, so that people like me who are out there running business and services, etc. in Pakistan, the average person, Pakistani, not the people sitting in the government who get their salaries, whether Pakistan defaults or not, I think that that's what really we should be doing. Thank you.
All right. Also add to that, with reference to the import of crude oil from Russia, I know that there is a sample that has been tested, and that the Minister for Petroleum has talked about how this is something that is good to go within the country. But do you think that there can be challenges still with reference to our refineries in this oil?
Yeah, okay, this is now becoming almost a 2-year-old debate. It started in the previous PTI government, and that minister also talked about, that suddenly they will have this deal. Now look, I mean, the crudes that we get from the Gulf, the crudes that we're going to get from Russia are different. I mean, so the refineries will have to adapt. But if it comes cheap, now remember that we have never been part of the non-aligned movement, so our refiners, none of them, Mahmood Court, Atak, you take any one of our refineries, we were not geared to handle Russian crudes. On the other hand, India has always been a non-aligned state during the Cold War. So, we will need to make some adaptation, and I think you're absolutely right in saying that yes, there is something, and the refineries have talked about it, but I'm quite sure that they will handle it.
All right. Farrukh, the situation also when we talk about whether or not that the public or the industry is able to understand what's going on, especially in terms of the kind of transparency that exists. I know with reference to the contract, for example, with Russia, is something that the minister says that he is not under obligation. This is not something that countries actually disclose. But with reference to where we stand regarding the economic challenges and the direction, do you think that there can possibly be more transparency, as Mr. Amer was talking about? And also add to that, whether or not we have factored in the climate change issues as well, and the kind of timelines that Dr. Khaqan was talking about also include, of course, elections if they happen this year, that both of these issues, of course, are going to have serious repercussions on the kind of costs that Pakistan will have to bear. Is this something that is part of our discussions or possible discussions in the future with the IMF?
Right, Sana, I don't think that we will be discussing with the IMF when to hold elections, right? And this is the last bit that you asked, so I wanted to address this first. But I want to actually address the other things as well. Yes, of course. More transparency always helps, right? And that is not all. There are certain other things that I wanted also to actually address, because Ahmed Durrani just actually mentioned Manmohan Singh's speech. So it actually took me back also to 1990s, when there was this gentleman, Dr. Mitra, who was chief economist of Indira Gandhi, and he was in the know when all these changes were taking place. So he has written a book called Traveler's Tale. In that book, he tells what exactly became in 1990s when election took place. First, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. After that election took place, the Congress party managed to form the government, but they were in dire straits, so much so that they were ready to sell their gold just to bail out the country. But at that time, it is said, it is reported in that book, that a message came from the US that follow our instructions, IMF will be in touch. If you do, you will get somewhere. If you don't follow our instructions, go hang. So the instructions included a list of finance ministers that could have been appointed. The first person, we are not told who it was, but the first person actually refused to be appointed or to take charge. The second person actually accepted that position, and he was Manmohan Singh. So the problem at this moment is not just speech, Sana. If you want to actually have the kind of change that the West would want, or for that matter IMF would want, they would want somebody different than Ishaq Dar Saab, right? And then there seems to be a clear clash between our fiscal policy and our monetary policy. On one side, we are pushing for pro-growth measures through trying to stimulate the economy through our fiscal policy. On the other side, our monetary policy is such that the policy rate is kept at 21%. Do you think that that is going to help stir the economy? No, it won't. And the people that you actually think might be closer to the West's expectation of Manmohan Singh or anything close might be sitting in junior positions in finance ministry, or then they might be sitting in the State Bank of Pakistan. So at this moment, I don't think that that kind of resolve or change of direction is possible. But if that comes, I'm sure that the economy can really pull forward. But right now, because we are trying to do too many things, we are trying to comply with the IMF, and then we are trying to actually do our thing where we want to be, seen as pro-people as well. We end up actually creating such a situation where we might not be able to achieve anything. So the question right now is, if the elections are delayed, who is going to be the finance minister? Is it going to be the same gentleman who is the finance minister right now? With that, do you think that when he has already said that we are not going to go to IMF, will that help at all? I don't think so. Is it going to be a change of government? Is it going to be a change of finance minister? Then you want to try to do something of that sort? I have my concerns there as well. So we just have to wait and see what direction this takes. But at this moment, we are really not moving in any direction per se.
All right, that's all we have time for regarding the situation with reference to the economic challenges the country faces. But of course, it remains to be seen what really lies ahead, especially in the next fiscal year. But the times are tough, and the government will have to gear up to what it wants to do for the progress of the country. We're now also going to be taking a little look at the political situation, especially in terms of the kind of rhetoric that has existed in the past and continues to persist in reference to the way that people have been instigated, and there has been discussions from political quarters regarding the involvement of military and establishment within the political arena, and then what needs to be done with regards to that. And something that we keep on hearing coming in from the PTI chairman, PTI leaders in the past, and then of course people like Adil Raja as well. Farrukh, when we take a look at the situation and the eventual the conversations that we've been hearing from people like Mr. Adil Raja and the arrest that we have seen earlier, is this something that actually points towards the kind of actions or consequences that the military leadership is talking about, and that needs to be done with regards to what is happening? How are we going to link what has happened, especially on May 9th, with people that have been involved from a political quarter or people like Adil Raja, and then actually bring them to book?
Right, Sana, first of all, an update on Adil Raja. We are told that he was apprehended yesterday, but the British police after investigation, has let him go through a bail, right, on bail. So after that, I don't know what exactly becomes of that situation. But when it comes to accountability, look, accountability is important, and I'm sure that one way or the other accountability will take place. But first, let us understand what this bunch of people were doing at that time. They have been traditionally known to be very close to the country's permanent institutions, particularly army, especially during Imran Khan's time. And at that time, they had actually projected an image that they are insiders. So when they are sitting in exile, and that's when the government of Pakistan cannot reach them, at that time they start insinuating that there are forces within forces, our forces, that might be ready to overthrow the system. So they might have created the kind of propaganda cycle that might have been inhaled by the likes of the PTI chairman and umpteen other people. They kept on implying that there are people who might be able to come out that day and overthrow the system. That clearly did not happen. So they are not insiders. But because they, at some point in their career, they were trusted or by the establishment or by the deep state, or for that matter, permanent institutions, because of that, they used that privilege to actually create a situation where we ended up with May 9th. So do you think that that kind of people will be allowed to walk scot-free? I think even if he actually exited, jail tomorrow, day after tomorrow, within weeks, he will be apprehended once again. There have been FIRs within Pakistan, and Pakistan can, of course, pursue this matter with the British and American authorities, because there are others. And
right, and Farrukh, I wanted to explore that further, and I hope we can get your take on that with reference to what you said about how they are perhaps out of reach of the country, and then of course with reference to what Pakistan can possibly do with the UK government as well. I want to understand that this historically seems to be a difficult thing to do in the past as well, and what sort of challenges do you think can possibly be there for Pakistan to actually make sure that it comes out in a tangible way, that whatever aspects the country is pursuing in terms of consequence are actually then translated into some sort of action against the individual, because this has not started today, it's been going on for quite some time now, and we really haven't seen that happening.
May I ask, when you say this has happened in the past and there wasn't any success, what episode did you have in mind? Are you referring to Altaf Hussain or somebody else?
No, I'm speaking specifically about Adil Raja and the way that he has already contributed in terms of the kind of videos that have come out.
Right. Regarding Adil Raja and, a bunch of other people, there's a gentleman who's sitting in Canada. There are two gentlemen, two or three, who are sitting in America, and they are they have been using the distance from Pakistan, the physical distance, to actually manipulate Pakistani mind and keep on adding to chaos. So I just want to actually point out that because I brought up Altaf Hussain's case as well, that was before 9/11, when Pakistan was not, a US or Western partner in war on terror. After that, there has been significant cooperation, and I think that there has been cooperation on similar things. And both countries have actually apprehended each other's criminals and handed them over. So I think that this time, if not today, within few weeks, there is going to be an action which will be tangible and which will be effective. And these people will be brought to Pakistani courts, Sana.
All right. Thank you very much, Farrukh, for those remarks. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Amer, Zafar, Durrani, for joining us and being a part of the debate. That's all that we have from the show. We'll see you tomorrow.